the split that's happening in the Republican Party is more and more apparent all the time. And I don't mean between like the Nikki Haley voters and the Donald Trump voters, because the vast majority seem to be Donald Trump voters. I mean between like the voters and the establishment, those kingmakers I was talking about. The very system that they're a part of that selects the candidates is corrupt. You got to separate ourselves from that, because they're boning you. They're absolutely trying to bone you. They're trying to, and are single-handedly trying to dictate who you can and cannot vote for. They're trying to spoil the party. The party's they're ballot spoiling right now. Shouldn't be doing this. Shouldn't be standing for this type of stuff, right? The ballot spoiling is not a good look. I don't understand it. The split in the party is a gross thing to watch happen, because it shows a clear motivation from both sides, right? Donald Trump is very anti-war for the most part, right? No new war started during Donald Trump's term. Seems to be pretty anti-Ukraine war right now, pretty anti-Israel war for the most part. Support Israel, but I pretty anti-war in the Middle East for the most part. He did a good job at quelling, North Korea. Seems to deal with China pretty well. Nikki Haley is already talking about sending boots into fucking Iran and doing war with Iran and need to strike within Iran. She's not even president, right? So this shows you where the interest lay at. That Donald Trump seems to be genuinely have the populist interest at heart, if you believe him to be an honest person. And Nikki Haley, I believe to be a sneaky snake in the grass, because she's a very traditional politician. She used to be working at the UN. She lies about shit. She's already shown to be lying about shit. I don't think that this is a woman that anybody should be trusting. I get it. I understand the appeal. I've said multiple times on the show, I know a few people, women in particular. It seems to be a woman thing in particular. They got a lady boner for Nikki Haley. They love the idea of a conservative woman who's strong. She's going to fucking stick it to the Iranians, stick it to the terrorists, and fucking stick it to the statists. Wrong. She is a statist. She will use the power of the state to control you. I guarantee it. She will send your sons and daughters to die. I guarantee it. I fucking Men's Warehouse it. If you elect that woman, she will send your sons and daughters to die. Donald Trump, with all of his problems, right, is talking about leaving NATO. People are very upset about this. Why you want to leave NATO? Why you want to do this? Because NATO is, I don't know, I'm going to say a giant fucking factor in what's going on with our involvement in Ukraine, right? If we didn't have this involvement in NATO, this legal, and I'm not advocating for leaving NATO. I'm explaining the strategy. I'm explaining the policy, right? Not only are we spending an inordinate amount of money in NATO to support those countries, when shit does pop off, on a yearly basis, the money that we're expending, when shit does pop off, we are the one that send the dollars. We are the ones that come with the missiles and with the guns and the money and the bullets and all the stuff. Every time. Even though we're already putting in the most amount of money. When something does happen, it's us that has to foot the bill. We can't protect our own people. We'll talk about this more in immigration, right? Can't protect our own people. We can't house our own people. We have our own border crisis. Now we're expected to spend hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to secure somebody else's border in another part of the planet. I understand why this doesn't make sense to people. It doesn't. I'm going to say it does make sense to me why it's happening, but I don't agree with it, right? I don't blame anybody for being confused and by being frustrated by that. Of course, it seems ludicrous that your tax dollars are being spent in another country when you fucking are barely making ends meet, when you have 30 people living in the park down by your house or in the right of way, and your state is using tax dollars to fill it with rocks so people can't live there. I understand. I don't blame anybody for being frustrated and confused and for reaching and leaning towards a Donald Trump figure, a populist figure who is telling you that he wants to return your power and your money home. That's what he's saying to you, right? Whether or not that's true, for this type of stuff, I tend to believe that he means what he says. Whether or not it's going to happen, who knows, right? The level of resistance that we saw that he gets from the deep state is crazy. But I tend to believe that he means what he says when he's talking about this stuff. So I tend to believe that he means what he's saying when he intends to leave NATO. And it's not just because he wants a more isolationist policy for the United States. It's because we're not getting the benefit from what we're putting into that product, right? He's a businessman. He sees things as products. How do we sell this? What's the benefit of this? What's the cost-benefit analysis of this venture? And it doesn't make any sense. It's flipped over. We're upside down on that cost-benefit analysis, on that investment in NATO. It's only cost us money. You could, discuss the ethereal, conceptual aspects of freedom and whatever, anti-Soviet. I don't know, right? That's a big discussion that would be very, very subjective. On an objective level, with the amount of money that we have expended into NATO, we have received very little benefit on an actual legitimate basis from our end. I don't blame anybody for wanting to remove ourselves from that, especially now. We're looking at the barrel of potential fucking World War III with, we said that about Ukraine initially, so maybe I shouldn't hyperbolize with that now, because we were talking more specifically with Iran, with those particular types of qualifications, the global war thing, right? And I guess I kind of shit on people during. All right, let me take that back. A very large conflict in Europe, right, with Russia. If this is what we're talking about, and I don't think that's a good idea. It's going to be extended, right? We're 2 years in or whatever in Ukraine, and people are like, "Oh, I can't believe that Russia's been able to hang on this whole time." I was listening to one of the dailies last week that are talking about Ukraine. They're like, oh, the Russians just continue to throw bodies of the war. Yeah, that's fucking what they do. That's what they've done this whole time. Colin said this when we first started talking about this war 2 years ago. It's like the Russians are going to be hard to beat. Like, typically, there were questions about their military prowess in the beginning, and now they're having to kind of respect it. Whatever level of superiority they have, or like technical superiority, they have more dudes. They have way more dudes than you. They can fight for longer than you. They have a bigger country, a bigger industry than you do. So Ukraine can't make its own bullets. Russia is already spinning it up and has for 3 years now their missile production. That's domesticated. Ukraine is still looking from outside of themselves to try and secure their own home front. I don't see, the winning side on continuing with what we're doing there. So I don't blame anybody. I see it's fine. I see it as less likely that we go to war in Europe, contrary to Joy Behar's beliefs, less likely that we go to war in Europe if we're not a part of NATO. That legal obligation that exists there is removed, and we have more choice in whether or not that's the right thing to do for our country at that time. There is a lot of things, and this carries over to immigration as well. We'll talk about it a little bit more there, that so a lot of things that we're doing in this country that we're doing because that's just what we've done. That's just how we've been doing it for this period of time, But America is in a very, very different place now than it was when we established NATO. And it's in a very, very different place now than it was when we began the asylum processes the way that we're doing them now. It's a very, very different place. You have to adjust to the circumstances that you're currently living in, or else you die. If you don't adapt, you die. You don't adapt, you don't overcome, you die. Let me just lay out the whole fucking statement there instead of this parsed up one. But if you don't evolve, you die, especially in a world like this. Things happen fast, and they happen for a long time. So you have to be prepared for that. And I think that, a removal from NATO isn't to say that we shouldn't have partnerships with people around the world. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working with other countries that have aligned global interests as we do. The world is global now. We've done it. That we've done for too long to turn back around because so many other people are involved in it. So it only makes sense to continue to work with people around the globe and have some form of alliance with them. But this one in which we expend inordinately more than everybody else, and then when something happens, we're still expected to put up more than everybody else, doesn't make any sense when we have a $34 trillion deficit and 10 million people coming in from our border in 4 years' time. That doesn't make any sense for us anymore. We have a lot of issues going on here that need to be solved that will only get worse if we send our manufacturing base of young men and women to die in another country. Ukraine is seeing that right now. They're living that evidence right now where the average age of their military is like 45. Okay, if your average age is 45, that means you have some dudes in there that are probably like 7, realistically like 15, 16, 17 years old. You also have some dudes that are about 70 years old. So the population of their country is fucked. It's absolutely fucked. Their young men are dead. Their fighting, living, working age men are dead. That's what happened there. That is what will happen here if we choose to enter openly into a conflict like that in Europe with Russia, who have more fucking dudes than we do.
Welcome to the south of the streets, coming at you every week.